This man has been stealing packages from this neighborhood for weeks.
Sylvia Peel's finger cut through the cold morning air, pointed directly at Mario like a weapon. Mario Delmore didn't move, didn't flinch. He stood on the public sidewalk and watched her point at him like he was something she'd found under her shoe.
Officer, I want him arrested. Right now.
Her voice was loud enough for 3 neighbors to hear. She wanted witnesses. She wanted a scene. She wanted him gone. Sylvia's chest rose and fell with the breathless satisfaction of someone who believed they had already won. But what Sylvia Peel didn't know was that the man she was trying to have arrested was the federal investigator already assigned to expose exactly what was happening on her block. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The coffee was still hot. That was one of the things Mario Delmore appreciated most about mornings now. The fact that he could actually sit still long enough to drink it while it was hot. 12 years as a U.S. postal inspector meant 12 years of cold coffee, skipped lunches, and 6 a.m. briefings. Those days were behind him. He had the separation papers to prove it. He settled deeper into his porch chair and let the October air do its thing. It was cool, but not cold. The kind of morning that made you feel like the world was behaving itself. Cedar Brook Drive stretched out in front of him, wide, clean, lined with brick homes and manicured lawns and American flags that barely moved in the breeze. Frisco, Texas. New neighborhood. New chapter. He opened the manila folder on his knee. Old habits. The folder held 3 weeks of quiet observations, handwritten notes, a printed map of the subdivision with 9 small red circles, marking the addresses where packages had gone missing over the past 4 months. Someone in this neighborhood was stealing from their own neighbors. The regional postal inspector's office had flagged the pattern and reached out to Mario before his separation papers were even dry. One last job, contracted, clean, simple. He knew how to do this in his sleep. He took a sip of coffee and looked up. The UPS truck was making its Tuesday run. Mario watched it the way he always watched delivery vehicles, not casually, the way most people do, but carefully. He clocked the time, 9:14 a.m. He noted which homes received packages and how long the truck idled in front of each one. He observed the angle of the front door cameras on the homes across the street. 2 had full coverage. 1 had a blind spot on the left side of the porch, maybe 4 feet wide. Just enough. He wrote it down. Across the street, the bay window at 411 Cedar Brook Drive caught a thin slice of morning light. She was standing there again. Mario had noticed her the first week he moved in. A woman about his age, early 30s, blonde, arms usually crossed over her chest, like she was bracing for a fight that hadn't started yet. She watched his house the way a security guard watches a door. Every morning. Sometimes in the afternoon, too. She had never once walked over to introduce herself. Never waved. Never even nodded. Every other neighbor on the block had come by within the first few days. Peachy Washington from next door brought banana bread. Hector from 4 houses down shook his hand in the driveway. Even the retired couple at the end of the cul-de-sac had hollered a hello from their car. Not her. Just the window. Just the watching. Mario closed the folder and stood up. He was wearing a pressed button-down, dark slacks, leather shoes. He looked, and knew he looked, like exactly what he was, a professional man at his own house on a Tuesday morning. He walked down his driveway to the porch steps, where 2 Amazon boxes sat waiting. New kitchen items. He'd ordered them 4 days ago. He picked them up, tucked them under his arm, turned and walked back inside. Simple. Unremarkable. The kind of thing that happens on every block in America 100 times a day. He set the boxes on the kitchen counter, poured himself a second cup of coffee, and stood at the window for a moment, looking out at the quiet street. A light wind moved through the oak trees lining the sidewalk. A kid rode past on a bicycle. The UPS truck had turned the corner and disappeared. It was a good neighborhood. He wanted to keep believing that. He walked back to the porch, folder in hand, and sat down. He had 3 more houses to observe today, 2 camera positions to confirm, and a follow-up call with Inspector Hampton at noon. He picked up his pen. Across the street, the woman in the bay window lowered her phone. Mario didn't look up. He was already writing. He didn't see her open the Cedarbrook Estates Facebook group. He didn't see her fingers start to move. He didn't know, not yet, that in the time it had taken him to walk down his own driveway, pick up his own packages, and walk back into his own house, Sylvia Peel had already decided what kind of man he was, and she was already telling the whole neighborhood about it. Sylvia Peel typed fast when she was angry. Her fingers moved across her phone screen like she was settling a score, which, in her mind, she was. She had been watching that man for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of him sitting on that porch, walking around the neighborhood with that notepad, picking up packages like he owned the place. Nobody knew him. Nobody had vouched for him. And in Sylvia's world, that was more than enough. She hit post. Has anyone noticed the man at 412 going through porches? 3rd time I've seen this. Something isn't right. She set her phone on the kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of water. By the time she set the glass down, her phone was already buzzing. Rick from her online group. Saw him yesterday, too. Very suspicious. A woman Sylvia didn't even know that well. Thank you for keeping an eye out. This is exactly why we need people like you on this block. Sylvia read each one and felt the warm, familiar glow of being right, of being necessary. She had built this group from nothing. 47 members, every household on the block. She was the one who posted the delivery alerts, the HOA meeting reminders, the warnings about coyotes spotted near the creek 2 summers ago. She was the one who kept this neighborhood safe. Who else was going to do it? Her phone buzzed again. She looked down expecting another supportive comment. It was Peachy Washington. That's Mario. He's our new neighbor at 412. Those are his packages. Sylvia stared at the screen. Then she pressed delete. Gone. She didn't need Peachy muddying the water. Peachy, who had lived on this block for 22 years and acted like that gave her the right to correct everyone. Peachy, who smiled too wide and talked too long and had some opinion about everything Sylvia ever posted. Sylvia had never liked her. Not since the day she'd tried to add a guest parking rule to the HOA bylaws, and Peachy had stood up at the meeting and called it unnecessary, in front of everyone. Sylvia put her phone in her pocket and went to make lunch. That evening, she posted again. This time she was more careful with her words. No address, no description. Just a gentle, concerned message about package security and the importance of watching out for one another. She added a reminder to check porch cameras and report anything unusual to her directly, as block captain. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. So important. Thank you, Sylvia. I've been worried about this for months. My husband is installing a new camera this weekend because of this. Thank you for looking out for us. Sylvia read every comment. She responded to most of them. She used words like community and safety and we all have to look out for each other. By 9 o'clock, the post had 31 reactions and 14 comments. It was the most engagement she'd had on anything in months. She didn't mention Mario by name. She didn't have to. The seed was planted. And in a neighborhood like Cedarbrook Estates, where people largely kept to themselves and took their cues from whoever spoke the loudest, a seed like that didn't need much water. Peachy Washington sat at her kitchen table with her reading glasses on and her phone in her hand. She had seen her comment disappear within minutes of posting it. She wasn't surprised. She had watched Sylvia Peel delete, dismiss, and steamroll people on this group for 3 years. But this was different. This wasn't a debate about parking rules or noise ordinances. This was a woman building a case against a man who had done absolutely nothing wrong, and doing it quietly, carefully, in a way that left no fingerprints. Peachy opened her phone's screenshot folder. She had taken one of Sylvia's original posts before it could be edited. She had taken another of the timestamp showing when her own comment had been removed. She didn't know exactly what she planned to do with them yet, but she kept them. She took off her reading glasses and set them on the table. Through her kitchen window, she could see the lights on inside 412 Cedar Brook Drive. She had met Mario Delmore 3 days ago when he'd walked over to introduce himself. Firm handshake. Warm eyes. He'd thanked her for the neighborhood welcome and asked about the local coffee shops. He seemed like a good man. Sylvia was going to make his life very difficult. Peachy knew that as surely as she knew her own name. She had seen it before, on this very street, to another family, 2 years ago. She had watched then, said too little too late, felt the guilt of it for months after their moving truck disappeared around the corner. She was not going to watch again. Wednesday morning came in gray and cool. Mario was up by 7. He made coffee, reviewed his notes from the day before, and pulled up the neighborhood map on his laptop. He had 4 properties left to assess: camera angles, porch visibility, sight lines from the street. Clean, methodical work. The kind he could do with his eyes closed. He packed his notepad into his breast pocket, zipped his jacket, and stepped outside by 8:30. The street was quiet. A few cars backed out of driveways. A woman in workout clothes walked a golden retriever toward the park entrance at the far end of the block. Leaves skittered across the sidewalk in small, dry bursts. Mario turned left out of his driveway and started walking. He moved at a deliberate pace, not slow enough to look lost, not fast enough to look like he was trying to get somewhere. Just a man walking his neighborhood. He paused in front of a beige house on the corner, 407, and looked at the front porch. The camera mounted above the door was angled too steeply downward. It would catch a person standing at the door, but miss anyone approaching from the left side of the yard entirely. He wrote it down. Moved on. He stopped again outside a cream-colored house with a wide driveway. Looked at the mailbox cluster near the curb. Noted the oak tree blocking the sight line from the nearest streetlight. Wrote it down. He wasn't hiding what he was doing. He had no reason to. He was a contracted investigator doing a walkthrough in a neighborhood where packages were being stolen. Quietly, professionally, and well within his authorization. He never saw her watching. Sylvia had been at her bay window since 8 o'clock. She watched Mario leave his house. Watched him turn left. Watched him stop in front of houses, look around, and write things down. Her jaw tightened with each stop he made. She told herself she had been right all along. There he was, bold as anything, walking around the block like he was making a shopping list of everything worth taking. She picked up her phone. She had already called the non-emergency line 4 times in the past year. 4 calls, 4 times the responding officer had found nothing and left with a polite nod in her direction. Those experiences hadn't dimmed her certainty. They had only sharpened her frustration. This time, she dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, I need to report a suspicious person in my neighborhood. Sylvia's voice was crisp and controlled. He's been casing homes for weeks. Right now, he's walking along Cedar Brook Drive writing things down. I believe he's been stealing packages. I have documentation. She gave the address. She gave a description. She used the word threatening once, carefully, like a card she'd been saving. 8 minutes later, a patrol car turned onto Cedarbrook Drive. Officer Nathan Lance had been on the job for 9 years. He had responded to enough suspicious person calls in neighborhoods like this one to recognize the pattern before he even stepped out of his vehicle. He pulled up slowly, assessed the scene, and climbed out. The woman waiting on the sidewalk was white, early 30s, arms folded tight across her chest. She moved toward him before he'd even closed his car door. "Thank goodness," she said. "I'm Sylvia Peel, block captain. I'm the one who called." "That's him, right there." She pointed down the sidewalk at a black man in a jacket and slacks, standing calmly 20 feet away with both hands visible. "He's been doing this for weeks, going through porches, writing things down, taking packages. I have photos. Can I see them?" Lance asked. Sylvia pulled out her phone and held up the screen. It was a screenshot. A man walking on a public sidewalk. That was all. Lance looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at the man down the street. The man hadn't moved. He wasn't nervous, wasn't shifting his weight, wasn't doing any of the things people did when a patrol car appeared and they had something to hide. He was just standing there, watching the situation with calm, patient eyes, both hands loose at his sides. Lance recognized that stillness. It wasn't the stillness of someone caught off guard. It was the stillness of someone who had been here before. "Stay here, please," Lance said to Sylvia, and started walking toward the man. Mario watched him come. He exhaled once, slow and quiet, and waited. Behind Lance, Sylvia followed anyway. Lance stopped 3 feet in front of Mario and looked him over once. Quick, professional, no hostility in it. "Sir, I'm Officer Lance with Frisco PD. I've received a complaint about suspicious activity in the area. Can I get your name and ask what you're doing out here this morning?" "Mario Delmore." His voice was even, unhurried. "I live at 412 Cedarbrook Drive. Moved in about 3 weeks ago." Sylvia stepped up beside Lance like she'd been invited. "He's not just walking around, officer. He's been doing this for weeks. Going up on porches, taking things. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I have it documented right here. Ma'am." Lance held up one hand without looking at her. His eyes stayed on Mario. "I'll get to you in a moment." Sylvia's mouth closed. Barely. "Mr. Delmore," Lance continued, "do you have any ID on you?" "I do," Mario said. "I'm also going to reach into my breast pocket. I want to tell you that before I do it." Lance gave a small nod. Mario reached in slowly and produced 2 items. He held them out flat on his palm like he'd done it 100 times. Because he had. A gold U.S. Postal Inspection Service badge, worn but genuine, catching the pale morning light. And a federal contractor authorization card issued 3 weeks ago bearing his name, photograph, and the seal of the Regional Postal Inspector's Office. Lance took both. He looked at them carefully. He turned the badge over. He read the authorization card top to bottom. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "I'm a contracted investigator," Mario said calmly. "Separated from the Postal Inspection Service 4 weeks ago after 12 years of federal service. I was contracted by the regional office before my separation was finalized. I'm conducting an authorized investigation into a package theft pattern in this neighborhood. 9 incidents over 4 months. That's what the notepad is for." The silence that followed lasted maybe 4 seconds. It felt much longer. Lance turned to Sylvia. Sylvia's arms were still crossed, but the certainty had drained out of her face. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That doesn't mean anything. He could have gotten that badge anywhere. He could have. "These credentials are authentic," Lance said. His voice was flat and final. "I can verify them in my system right now, but I've seen enough federal contractor IDs to know what a real one looks like. He's been going through people's porches, You reported that he stole packages, Lance said. Did you personally witness him take a package from someone else's property? I saw him with boxes. From his own porch? Sylvia's jaw tightened. He could have taken those from anywhere. Ms. Peel. Lance's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You called 911 and reported a federal investigator conducting authorized work in his own neighborhood. I want you to understand what that means. He paused, making sure she was actually listening. Filing a false police report carries criminal exposure in this state. This interaction is now documented. Your name, your address, the nature of your complaint, and the outcome. He looked at her steadily. This is the fourth call of this nature on your record. Sylvia stared at him. A flush crept up her neck. Do you understand what I've just told you? I understand, she said. The words came out tight and clipped, like she was biting down on them. Lance turned back to Mario and held out both credentials. Mr. Delmore, I apologize for the interruption. You're free to continue. He pulled a business card from his front pocket and held it out. If you have any further issues, don't hesitate to call me directly. Mario took the card. Thank you, officer. Lance walked back to his patrol car without another word to Sylvia. He didn't look back. He got in, ran the credentials through his system, confirmed, federal, active contract, noted everything in his report, and pulled away from the curb. Sylvia stood on the sidewalk alone. Her face was red. Her arms were still crossed, but they weren't holding power anymore. They were holding her together. She turned and walked back to her house without looking at Mario. Her front door closed behind her hard enough to rattle the frame. Mario stood still for a moment. He looked at Lance's business card, then tucked it into his breast pocket beside his notepad. Well, the voice came from his left. Peachy Washington was standing at her garden fence 10 feet away, a small pair of pruning shears in one hand and a look on her face that was equal parts satisfaction and relief. She shook her head slowly. Welcome to the neighborhood, baby. The warmth in her voice was genuine and deep. I have been waiting 3 years for someone to shut that woman up. Mario looked at her. Then, for the first time since moving to Cedar Brook Drive, he smiled. Mario made a second pot of coffee at 6 o'clock. He knew he wouldn't sleep much anyway. The morning had stirred something in him. Not anger, not exactly, but a sharpened focus. The kind that settled into his chest and stayed there until a case broke open. He recognized it the way you recognize an old song. He hadn't felt it since his last investigation with the Federal Service, and here it was again, right on schedule. He sat down at his kitchen table, opened his laptop, and pulled up his case file. The update to Inspector Carol Hampton was routine. 3 paragraphs. Camera positions confirmed. 2 additional blind spots identified. No direct suspect contact. He attached his handwritten notes as a scanned document, the way Hampton always preferred, and hit send. Then he sat back and looked at the screen. He opened a fresh document and started building the timeline. 9 thefts. 4 months. He had the incident reports Hampton had forwarded to him before the contract started. Dates, addresses, descriptions of stolen items. He transferred each one onto a printed neighborhood map, marking each address with a red pen. When he was done, he spread the map flat on the kitchen table and looked at it under the overhead light. The first thing he noticed was the spacing. The thefts weren't random. They weren't scattered across the neighborhood in the careless pattern of an opportunist grabbing whatever they stumbled across. They were methodical, contained to specific streets, specific clusters of houses. He went back to the incident reports and added the timestamps. Every single theft had occurred between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Every one. On weekdays only. Not a single weekend incident in 4 months. Mario circled the time window in red. He sat with that for a moment. 10 to 2. Weekdays. That wasn't luck. That was knowledge. Whoever was doing this knew exactly when these specific houses would be empty, knew the residents' work schedules, knew when deliveries were expected. This wasn't a stranger passing through and grabbing an opportunity. This was someone with access to information about this neighborhood's daily rhythms. Mario leaned forward. He opened the Cedarbrook Estates Facebook group on his laptop. Sylvia Peel had made the group public, visible to anyone, members or not. He scrolled back through 4 months of posts, HOA reminders, lost pet alerts, a debate about holiday lights. And then, every Monday morning, without exception, a post from Sylvia Peel under the header, Weekly Community Patrol Schedule. Mario went still. He opened the first one. Sylvia's Monday patrol schedule listed the streets she and 2 other HOA volunteers would be covering each day of the coming week, along with the times. It was thorough, detailed, the kind of post that, on the surface, looked like responsible community organizing. He opened the second Monday post, then the third. Then he pulled up his theft timeline and laid it beside the patrol schedule posts. His stomach dropped. The pattern was exact. Every house that had been robbed was listed in Sylvia's weekly patrol schedules, specifically in the time windows after Sylvia's volunteer patrol had already passed through. The thief wasn't hitting houses at random during business hours. The thief was hitting houses in the precise gaps that Sylvia's own schedule left uncovered. The windows she had publicly posted every Monday for anyone to read. Mario sat back slowly. He looked at the map again. 9 red circles. He picked up his pen and drew a line connecting them in chronological order. Then he sat back and looked at where the lines converged, where the center of the pattern sat geographically. 4111 Cedarbrook Drive. Sylvia Peel's house. He didn't move for a long moment. Just looked at it. Right there in the middle of everything. Not on the edge of the pattern. Not near it. At the center of it. Every theft radiated outward from her address like spokes on a wheel. He thought about what Peachy had told him that morning at the garden fence. The way Sylvia ran the group. The way she controlled the information. The way she always seemed to know exactly what was happening on this block before anyone else did. He thought about Sylvia at her bay window, watching. Always watching. The coffee in his mug had gone cold again. Mario reached over and closed the map. Then he closed his laptop. He sat in the quiet kitchen for a moment, listening to the house settle around him. Outside, Cedarbrook Drive was dark and still. Every porch light on the block, glowing like nothing in the world, was wrong. Someone in this neighborhood was robbing their own neighbors blind. And they had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. The real investigation had just begun. Peachy Washington made good coffee. That was the first thing Mario noticed when she handed him a mug on her front porch Thursday morning. Strong, dark, no nonsense. He wrapped both hands around it and settled into the wicker chair she'd pulled out for him like she'd been expecting company for years. "I figured you'd come by eventually," she said, settling into the chair beside him. "You've got that look." "What look is that?" "The one that means you're not done asking questions." She smiled at him over her own mug. "I taught middle school for 31 years. I know that look very well." Mario smiled back. Then he opened his notepad. He spent Thursday and Friday moving carefully through the neighborhood. He kept it casual. A new resident getting acquainted, learning names, stopping to chat over fences and at mailboxes. He wasn't recording conversations. He wasn't presenting himself as an investigator. He was just a man being neighborly, asking the kinds of questions new residents ask. "How long have you lived here? Do you know most people on the block? Have you had any trouble lately?" People talked. They always did. He heard the same things from different mouths. Sylvia Peel ran the HOA group like her personal kingdom. She decided who belonged and who didn't. If she liked you, the neighborhood embraced you. If she didn't, life got quietly complicated. Noise complaints, pointed comments at HOA meetings, posts in the group that made people look sideways at you without ever saying your name directly. But it was Peachy who gave him the most. They sat on her porch both mornings. She talked, and he listened, and he understood within the first hour why Sylvia had tried so hard to silence her. Peachy Washington remembered everything. Dates, names, specific conversations. She had the memory of a woman who had spent 3 decades making sure 30 kids a year didn't fall through the cracks. 2 years ago, Peachy said, on Friday morning, setting her mug down firmly. Young family, the Hendersons, moved in on Magnolia Court. You know it, the side street that curves around near the park entrance. She paused. Sylvia filed a noise complaint against them the second week they were here. Then again the week after that. Then every week for 3 months straight. Did anything come of it? Nothing. Every single time, the responding officer found nothing. Because there was nothing. Those people were quiet as church mice. Peachy's jaw tightened. But it didn't matter. The complaints kept coming, and the posts kept appearing in the group. Vague little things, nothing you could point to directly. But everyone knew who she meant. By month 4, the Hendersons were gone. She looked out at the street. Nice family. 2 little girls. Mario wrote it down. Tell me about her finances, he said. Peachy glanced at him. You noticed too. Hard not to. Peachy leaned back. Her husband Bert passed about 2 years ago. Heart attack, sudden. He had money, real estate, some investments. But from what I understood, it wasn't leave your widow rich forever money. It was comfortable money. Managed carefully money. She tilted her head. But about 6 months ago, Sylvia shows up in a brand new car. Then the kitchen renovation starts. I could hear the contractors from my living room for 3 weeks. And I've seen the shopping bags coming in. Nice ones. The kind with rope handles and tissue paper. All recent. All within the last 6 months, Peachy confirmed. Mario turned a page in his notepad. Tell me about her brother. Peachy's expression shifted. Something careful moved across her face. Glenn, she said. Flat. Like the name itself tasted off. Glenn Peel. Sylvia's younger brother, 28 years old. Moved in after Bert died. Sylvia said it was so she wouldn't be alone in the house. Peachy paused. He keeps to himself. Doesn't work, far as I can tell. Sleeps late. I see his car, beat-up gray thing, leaving mid-morning sometimes, back by early afternoon. Mario's pen stopped moving. Mid-morning, back by early afternoon. 10 to 2. He kept his face neutral. You ever have any direct problems with him? No. He just gives me a feeling. Peachy looked at him directly. The kind of feeling I learned to trust a long time ago. Mario closed his notepad and finished his coffee. The morning was warming up slowly, pale sunlight pushing through the oak trees along the fence line. Peachy, he said, I appreciate your time. You find who's doing this, she said simply. Not a request. Mario tucked the notepad into his pocket and stood up. He walked back to his house with his head down and his jaw set, already building the next layer of the case. Glenn Peel Jr. mid-morning. Gray sedan. Back by early afternoon. He wrote the name at the top of a fresh page and circled it. The envelope was crisp and white. It sat in Mario's mailbox Monday morning between a utility bill and a grocery store circular, looking official and deliberate. The kind of envelope that wanted you to know it meant business before you even opened it. The return address read, Cedarbrook Estates Homeowners Association, Board of Directors. Mario stood at the end of his driveway, looked at it for a moment, then carried it inside. He set it on the kitchen table and poured his coffee first. Then he sat down and opened it. The letter was 2 pages, single-spaced. It cited Section 4.7 of the Cedar Brook Estates Community Bylaws, prohibition of commercial and professional activity in residential zones, and informed Mario Delmore at 412 Cedar Brook Drive that the HOA board had received formal complaints regarding his conduct. It used phrases like unauthorized surveillance of residents and creating an atmosphere of unease within the community. It demanded that he immediately cease all investigative activity within the neighborhood and reminded him that continued violations could result in formal HOA sanctions. It was signed by 2 board members. Their names meant nothing to Mario, but the timing meant everything. He read it twice. Then he called Carol Hampton. Hampton picked up on the second ring. "Mario, did you get something from the Cedar Brook HOA?" A pause. "This morning." "Yes." He kept his voice steady. "Sylvia Peel filed a complaint with the board. They're telling me to stand down, citing a residential use clause. I saw it." Hampton's voice had that careful, measured quality it always got when she was managing a situation. "Mario, I need you to hear me. The complaint has reached my office as well. Not just the HOA. Someone forwarded it up the chain here with a cover note questioning the contract authorization." Mario set down his coffee mug. "She moved fast." "She did. And until I get this sorted out internally, I need you to pull back. Keep a low profile. Don't give anyone anything they can point to." A brief silence. "I'm not pulling the contract. I'm asking you to be smart." "I'm always smart. I know you are. That's why I'm asking instead of ordering." Hampton paused again. "What do you have so far? A pattern. A strong one." "I'm close, Carol. I need a little more time." "Then take it carefully. Get me something concrete, something I can put in front of the fraud unit, and I'll handle everything above me." Her voice softened just slightly. "Don't let her push you out, Mario. But don't give her ammunition either." He stared at the letter on the table. "Understood." He ended the call and sat with the quiet for a moment. The HOA letter lay in front of him, neat and official, every word of it weaponized. He thought about Sylvia Peel sitting across the street, watching him every morning from her bay window. He thought about how fast she had moved, from the Facebook post to the 911 call, to a formal HOA complaint, all within a week. She was organized. She was relentless. And she clearly had 2 board members in her pocket willing to sign their names to her campaign. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in the back of his case folder. Evidence of its own kind. That evening, Sylvia posted in the Cedar Brook Estates Facebook group. She didn't use Mario's name. She never did. That was her method, her particular brand of plausible deniability. The post read, "Happy to share that the HOA board has taken formal steps to address community concerns about unwanted surveillance and harassment of residents. Your safety and comfort are always the priority. Thank you all for your continued support." The comments came in fast. "Thank you, Sylvia. We feel so much safer knowing you're looking out for us. This is why we're lucky to have you as block captain." Finally! Someone had to do something. Sylvia responded to each one. Warm, grateful, humble. The picture of a woman who only ever wanted what was best for her neighborhood. Mario read the post from his kitchen table, phone in hand. He read it once. Then he set the phone down face first on the table and looked at the wall. She was good, he would give her that. Every move designed, every word chosen, building a case against him in the court of neighborhood opinion while his hands were legally tied. He picked up his pen. He turned to a fresh page in his notepad and wrote 2 words at the top. Stay quiet. Then, underneath it, in the same steady hand, keep digging. He wasn't going anywhere. The week after the HOA letter was quiet. too quiet. The kind of quiet that had weight to it. Mario kept his head down the way Hampton asked. No more sidewalk walkthroughs, no more stopping in front of houses with his notepad. He worked from his kitchen table, reviewing what he already had, building the timeline tighter, waiting. Sylvia didn't post anything directed at him. No new complaints arrived. The neighborhood went about its business like nothing had happened. Mario didn't trust it for a single second. Saturday morning his phone rang at 7:15. He knew from the first sound of her voice that something was wrong. Peachy Washington was not a woman who rattled easily. 31 years in a middle school classroom had burned most of the rattle out of her long ago. But the voice on the other end of the line was shaken, tightly controlled, the way people sound when they are working hard not to fall apart. "Mario?" A breath. "I need you to come over." He was out the door in 4 minutes. Peachy was standing in her driveway in her housecoat and slippers, arms wrapped around herself against the morning chill. Her car, a dark blue Honda she kept spotless, sat at the curb in front of her house. All 4 tires were flat, not slowly deflated, slashed. Deep, deliberate cuts on each one, the kind that took intention and a sharp blade. Mario crouched beside the front tire and looked at it without touching anything. Clean cuts. Someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who wanted it to be obvious. "When did you find it?" he asked. 7 o'clock. "I came out to get the paper." Her voice was steadier now that he was there. "I almost didn't see the note. It was tucked under the wiper blade." He stood up and looked at the windshield. A folded piece of white paper sat under the driver's side wiper. He photographed it with his phone before carefully unfolding it with 2 fingers at the corner, touching as little as possible. 4 words, written in black marker. Block letters. Pressed hard into the page. "Mind your business." Mario photographed it. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he folded it back the way he'd found it. "Peachy, I need you to call the police and report this. Don't touch the note. Don't touch the tires. Leave everything exactly as it is until an officer gets here." He looked at her directly. "Can you do that?" She nodded once. Firm. Officer Lance arrived 40 minutes later. Mario had stepped back. He was a neighbor now, nothing more, and watched from Peachy's porch steps as Lance surveyed the damage. Lance bagged the note as evidence, photographed each tire, and walked the perimeter of the car twice. Then he came and sat down across from Peachy at her porch table, voice calm and professional. "Ms. Washington, I want to be straight with you. Without a witnessed perpetrator or camera footage capturing the act, there isn't much I can move on immediately. The note goes into evidence. I'll canvass the immediate neighbors for any footage they might have." He paused. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" Peachy looked at Mario. Mario said nothing. "No," Peachy said quietly. Lance left an hour later. After his patrol car disappeared around the corner, the street went still again. Mario and Peachy sat on her porch in silence for a while. The slashed tires sat at the curb like a message that didn't need translating. That afternoon, Peachy called him. "Mario." Her voice was different now. The steadiness was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. "I've been thinking since this morning. I'm 67 years old. I live alone. I don't have anyone coming to check on me every day. And whoever did this—" She stopped, started again. "I want to help you, I do, but I can't be a target. Not at my age, not by myself." "I understand," Mario said, and he meant it completely. "I'm sorry. Don't be. You've already helped more than you know." After he hung up, he sat at his kitchen table in the late afternoon quiet. The light through the window was the low orange kind that came at the end of October days. His notepad was open in front of him. His case folder was neat and organized and full of information that still wasn't quite enough. He thought about Peachy standing in her driveway in her housecoat. 67 years old. 31 years of giving everything to this community, and someone had crept up to her car in the dark and taken a knife to her tires just to remind her that she was vulnerable. Mario picked up his pen. Whoever did this was scared, and scared people made mistakes. The text came in at 8:15 Sunday morning. Mario was on his second cup of coffee when his phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Unknown number. He almost let it go. Then he read the message. This is Hector Bander, 408 Cedarbrook. Peachy told me what happened to her car. I have Ring cameras front and back. Been up for 2 months. You're welcome to look at the footage if it helps. Come by whenever. Mario set down his mug and reached for his jacket. Hector Bander was a retired electrician, mid-60s, with a firm handshake and the kind of direct manner that Mario immediately respected. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need the situation explained. He pulled up a chair at his home office desk, logged into his Ring account, and slid the keyboard toward Mario. 2 months of footage. Front camera covers the street and the sidewalk all the way to the Garza place on the left. Back camera gets the alley. He stood up. I'll make coffee. Mario pulled the chair in and got to work. He started with the dates from his theft timeline. 6 incidents that fell within the 2 months Hector's cameras had been active. He pulled up each date and scrubbed through the delivery window. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. He watched the street with the focused, unhurried patience of a man who had spent 12 years doing exactly this. The first date showed nothing unusual. Cars, a mail carrier, a woman walking a stroller. The second date, he slowed down. There, a figure moving along the far side of the street at 11:47 a.m. Black hoodie, hood up, hands in the front pocket. The figure walked at an unhurried pace, slightly too close to the row of parked cars, using them as partial cover from the camera. Not obvious enough to flag for a casual viewer. Obvious enough for Mario. He noted the timestamp and kept going. Third date. Same figure, same hoodie, same deliberate positioning relative to parked vehicles. This time passing Hector's house at 12:03, slowing almost imperceptibly as he passed 404. A house Mario knew had received a stolen package that same afternoon. Fourth date. The figure again. Fifth date. Sixth date. 6 separate appearances. Same build, same hoodie, same practiced camera-aware movement. Whoever this was, they had studied the sightlines on this block. They knew where the cameras were pointed. They moved through the gaps deliberately, like someone who had done a reconnaissance walk first, like someone who already knew this neighborhood very well. Mario went back to the 5th clip. Something was different. He scrubbed forward slowly, frame by frame. The figure reached the end of Hector's property line and turned, just slightly, just for a moment, toward the street, checking for cars before crossing. The hood shifted. The light from the street caught the left side of his face. Mario stopped the footage. He leaned in close to the screen. The image was grainy, compressed the way all Ring footage got when you pushed in on it. But the jawline was there. The angle of the cheekbone, the particular way the chin came forward. Mario had spent 12 years studying surveillance footage. He knew how to read a face even through noise and compression. He had seen that face before. He pulled out his phone and opened Sylvia Peel's Facebook profile. He scrolled back through her posts, back past the HOA updates and the neighborhood alerts and the carefully worded community safety reminders, until he found what he was looking for. A photo from the previous summer. A backyard cookout. Sylvia smiling in the center, holding a red plastic cup. And beside her, one arm around her shoulders, squinting against the afternoon sun, Glenn Peel Jr. He was wearing a white t-shirt with a large graphic logo across the chest. Red letters. A stylized emblem in the upper left corner of the shirt. Mario looked at the frozen frame on Hector's monitor. On the left sleeve of the black hoodie, just below the shoulder seam, was a small rectangular patch. The compression made it indistinct, but the shape and the color were consistent. Red. A stylized emblem. Mario photographed the frozen screen with his phone. Then he photographed Sylvia's Facebook photo. He placed them side by side on his screen and looked at them for a long time. Hector came back in with 2 mugs and set one beside the keyboard without a word. Mario sat back slowly. The evidence wasn't perfect. The freeze frame was grainy. The patch detail was circumstantial. He knew that. He knew it wouldn't be enough on its own. But it was a thread, a real one. And threads, pulled carefully, had a way of unraveling everything. He picked up his coffee. Then a thought moved through him, quiet and cold, like a draft under a closed door. Glenn had used Sylvia's HOA schedules. Glenn knew the delivery windows. Glenn moved through this neighborhood like someone who had studied it from the inside. Mario stared at the 2 photos on his screen. Did Sylvia know what her brother was doing? The question settled into the room and refused to leave. Mario drove to the regional postal office Monday morning with everything he had. The freeze frame printout, the side-by-side photo comparison, the full theft timeline mapped against Sylvia's HOA patrol schedules, Peachy's account of Sylvia's spending habits, Hector's camera footage saved to a USB drive, 4 weeks of careful, methodical work, laid out in a manila folder on the passenger seat beside him. Carol Hampton met him in the 3rd-floor conference room. She closed the door, poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the corner, and sat down across from him without small talk. That was one of the things Mario had always respected about her. No preamble. Just work. He walked her through everything. Slowly. Systematically. The way he had been trained. Hampton listened without interrupting, her reading glasses on, making small notes in the margin of her legal pad. When he finished, she sat back and looked at the spread of documents on the table between them. "It's compelling," she said. "It's more than compelling." "I know." She removed her glasses. "But compelling isn't actionable, Mario." "Not yet." She slid the freeze-frame printout toward the postal fraud analyst sitting at the end of the table, a sharp-faced woman named Reyes, who had been quietly reviewing everything as Mario presented it. "What do you think?" Reyes looked up. "The footage comparison is circumstantial. The patch detail is too degraded for a positive visual identification. A defense attorney would destroy it in 30 seconds. The financial pattern is suggestive but unverifiable without a warrant, and we can't get a warrant on suggestive." She set the printout down. "The schedule correlation is interesting. But interesting isn't probable cause." Mario looked at Hampton. Hampton held his gaze. "Get me something direct. A confirmed identity. A financial trail I can trace. Something that puts Glenn Peel Jr. at a specific address, at a specific time with a specific package." She paused. "I'm not dropping this. I'm asking you to go 1 level deeper." He drove home Monday evening in the kind of silence that didn't need a radio to fill it. He pulled into his driveway, killed the engine, and sat for a moment. The October sky was going dark early now, the way it did this time of year, the neighborhood streetlights flickering on one by one down the block. He got out, unlocked his front door, and stepped inside. He set his keys on the entryway table. He looked at the kitchen. His laptop was open. Mario stood completely still in the doorway. He never left his laptop open. 12 years of federal work had made that a reflex as automatic as locking his car. Closed and dark when he left. Always. He hadn't used it since Sunday evening, and he had shut it then. He was certain of that the way he was certain of his own name. He didn't touch it. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room. Nothing visibly disturbed. Nothing missing that he could see. But the laptop was open at a 45-degree angle, tilted toward the back door, like someone had been looking at the screen and hadn't bothered, or hadn't thought, to close it on the way out. He called Lance that night, laid it out clean. Lance told him to touch nothing. He was there within the hour, moved through the house professionally, noted the back gate showing fresh scuff marks on the latch. No forced entry. The latch had been lifted from outside, the way you could if you knew the mechanism. Lance documented everything. Told Mario he would follow up Tuesday morning. Mario barely slept. He was up at 6 Tuesday, when his phone started buzzing. 3 notifications from the Cedarbrook Estates Facebook group in less than 10 minutes. He opened the app. Sylvia had posted at 5:58 a.m. She had used his name this time. The post was long, detailed. It accused Mario Delmore of conducting illegal surveillance on residents, of intimidating an elderly neighbor, Peachy Washington, and of creating a threatening environment on the block. It included the photo of him with his notepad from weeks ago. It was carefully, surgically written, every word chosen to sound like genuine fear rather than calculated attack. By 6:30, it had 47 reactions and 22 comments. By 8 o'clock, someone had screenshotted it and emailed it to the regional postal office. Hampton called at 2 Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was flat and careful. "Mario, my superiors have flagged your contract. There's a formal complaint sitting on the Deputy Regional Inspector's desk right now. Until it's reviewed and cleared, your authorization is suspended. Effective immediately." The line went quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. Mario set his phone on the kitchen table and looked out the window at 411 Cedarbrook Drive. Sylvia's new car sat gleaming in the driveway. Her bay window was dark. She wasn't watching today. She didn't need to. She had already won the morning. Mario sat at his kitchen table until the sun went down. He didn't pace. He didn't make calls. He just sat there in the fading Tuesday light and let himself feel the full weight of it. The suspension. The Facebook post with his name on it. 47 reactions from people who had never once spoken to him. 22 comments from neighbors who had decided what kind of man he was based on Sylvia Peel's 5:58 a.m. performance. He let himself feel it. And then he picked up his pen. He tore a fresh page from his notepad and drew a line down the center. Left column, right column. On the left, he wrote, "What I cannot do." On the right, "What I can still do." The left column filled up fast. He couldn't conduct any investigation under the federal contract, couldn't present himself as an authorized investigator, couldn't request records, access postal data, or formally compel anything from anyone. His contractor authorization was suspended. On paper, he was just a man living in a house. He looked at the right column for a long time. He was still a private citizen. He still had the legal right to report a crime committed against him. His home had been entered without permission. His property had been accessed by someone who had no right to be there. That wasn't a postal matter. That wasn't a contractor issue. That was a criminal trespass, and it belonged to Frisco PD whether his federal authorization existed or not. He wrote, "The break-in." Then he stopped and thought. The first week he moved into 412 Cedarbrook Drive before he had unpacked his kitchen boxes or hung a single picture on the wall. Mario had done one thing. He had walked his perimeter. Front door, back door, side gate, fence line. He had noted every angle, every approach, and he had installed a single exterior security camera above his back gate, a small, weatherproof unit angled down at the latch and the 5 feet of walkway leading to it. 12 years of federal service. Old habit. He had never mentioned it to anyone because he had never needed to. Hampton didn't know about it. Lance didn't know about it. Sylvia Peel certainly didn't know about it. He stood up slowly from the table and got his laptop. He pulled up the camera application and navigated to Monday's footage. The timestamp he was looking for was between 10 a.m., when he left for the regional office, and 6 p.m., when he returned. He scrubbed forward from 10. At 12:47 p.m., the back gate moved. Mario leaned in. The latch lifted from the outside. Smoothly, without hesitation, the practiced movement of someone who had done it before or had been shown how. The gate swung inward. A figure stepped through. The camera angle was direct. The light was good. No hood this time. No deliberate positioning away from sight lines. Because this time he hadn't known the camera was there. Glenn Peel Jr. looked almost relaxed as he crossed Mario's back walkway and tried the rear door. He spent 4 minutes inside the house. At 12:51 he came back out through the gate, latched it behind him, and walked away without looking back. Mario sat very still. He watched it twice more. Then he saved the footage in 3 separate places: his laptop, his phone, and a cloud backup he had set up before the contract even started. Then he sat back and thought about what he was looking at. Glenn had used a key, or something that functioned like one. The latch on Mario's back gate required either a key or the specific knowledge of how to manipulate it from outside, a technique that wasn't obvious unless someone had shown you. Either Sylvia had given Glenn access information about a neighbor's property, or Glenn had obtained it himself during one of his mid-morning reconnaissance passes through the block. Either way, it was criminal trespass, clean and documented. Mario looked at Officer Lance's business card, which had been sitting in the back of his case folder since that first morning on the sidewalk. He picked it up and turned it over in his fingers. Lance had given him this card directly. Not the department number, his personal line. If you have any further issues, don't hesitate to call me directly. That had been a deliberate offer. Mario had recognized it then, and he recognized it now. He dialed. Lance picked up on the 3rd ring. Mario spoke without introduction. I have camera footage of the person who broke into my house. I can identify him by name. I need to meet with you directly. Not through dispatch, not through a report form. Directly. A pause. Short and focused. Send me the footage tonight, Lance said. I'll be at your door at 8 tomorrow morning. Mario ended the call. He looked out the dark window at the quiet street. For the first time since Tuesday afternoon, he felt the weight begin to lift. Lance was at the front door at 8 o'clock exactly. Not 8:02. Not 8:15. 8 o'clock. Mario respected that. He opened the door before Lance could knock, handed him a coffee, and led him straight to the kitchen table where the laptop was already open and the footage queued up. Lance set his coffee down, pulled the laptop toward him, and watched. He watched it once without speaking. Then he reached out and scrubbed back to the moment the gate latch lifted and watched that part again. He leaned in close, the way Mario had, studying the angle and the light. Then he sat back. That's a clean shot, he said. I know. You get his face full on for about 2 seconds right here. Lance tapped the screen at the moment Glenn stepped through the gate. That's enough. Mario slid a printed still frame across the table. The moment he had identified, Glenn's face turned fully toward the camera in the clear mid-morning light. Beside it, he placed a printout of Sylvia's Facebook cookout photo. Glenn Peel Jr. in both images, unmistakable. Lance looked at them side by side for a long moment. Then he pulled out his own notepad. Full name? Glenn Peel Jr., 28 years old. Resides at 411 Cedar Brook Drive with his sister, Sylvia Peel. Mario paused. Gray sedan. I don't have a plate, but Peachy Washington on the block can confirm the vehicle. She's seen it regularly. Lance was already writing. How did he get through the gate? Lifted the latch from outside. Either he was shown the mechanism, or he was given access information by someone who knew the property. Mario kept his voice even. I had not shared that information with anyone. Lance looked up. The implication hung between them, clear and unspoken. I'm going to run his name, Lance said. He stepped onto the front porch with his radio, and Mario poured himself a second coffee and waited. The morning was cold and bright, the kind of November day that looked warmer through a window than it actually was. 3 minutes passed. Then 5. Lance came back inside and sat down. His expression had shifted. Still professional, still contained, but with something new underneath it. The particular look of a man who has just found exactly what he was hoping not to find. Glenn Peel, Jr. has a prior, he said. 3 years ago. Misdemeanor conviction. Receiving stolen goods. Charges were reduced from the original filing, which was felony possession of stolen property. He tapped his pen once on the table. He did 8 months probation. Clean since then. Or appeared to be. Mario said nothing, just listened. That prior matters, Lance continued. Combined with this footage, it builds a profile that a judge is going to take seriously. He straightened his notes. I'm filing the criminal trespass report this morning. I'll have it on my sergeant's desk before noon. The prior gives us enough to push for a background check and a formal look at his recent activity. He stood up and collected his things, tucking the printed still frames carefully into his folder. Mario. He stopped at the kitchen doorway. I want to ask you something directly. Go ahead. Is there anything else I should know about? Anything that connects this trespass to the package thefts? Mario looked at him for a moment. He thought about Hampton's instruction. Stand down. Nothing official. He thought about the USB drive in his case folder, and the theft timeline, and the HOA schedule correlation. He thought about the question he still couldn't fully answer, whether Sylvia knew. I have a contact at UPS Loss Prevention, Mario said carefully. I'm making a personal call today. As a private citizen who has had property stolen in this neighborhood, he held Lance's gaze. If anything comes out of that conversation that's relevant to your investigation, I'll make sure you hear about it. Lance held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then he nodded once. I'll be in touch. He let himself out. Mario stood at the kitchen window and watched the patrol car pull away from the curb. Then he picked up his phone and scrolled to a number he hadn't dialed in almost 3 months. A contact he had cultivated over 8 years of working package theft cases. A woman at UPS's National Loss Prevention Division who owed him 2 favors and had told him so, in writing, after a case he had cracked for her division in 2021. Her name was Torres. She picked up on the second ring. Mario Delmore, she said. I was wondering when you'd call in one of those favors. Today, he said, I need you to cross-reference 9 addresses for me against any insurance claims filed on stolen packages in the last 4 months. A pause. The sound of a chair rolling across a hard floor. Send me the addresses, Torres said. Give me until this evening. The call came at 7:42 Wednesday evening. Mario was at the kitchen table with a plate of food he hadn't touched when his phone buzzed. Torres. He picked up before the second ring. I've got your results, she said. Her voice had the focused, clipped quality of someone who had spent the afternoon digging and found more than they expected. You want the short version or the full version? Full version. All right. The sound of papers moving. 9 addresses. I cross-referenced everyone against insurance claims filed in the corresponding delivery windows over the past 4 months. A pause. 3 of the 9 stolen packages were high-value insured shipments. We're talking electronics, jewelry, a medical device. Not cheap. What happened to the claims? 2 were filed as sender loss claims, meaning the shipping company absorbed the cost. Standard procedure when delivery is confirmed, but the package goes missing post-drop. Both were processed and closed. Another pause. Longer this time. The third one is where it gets interesting. Mario set down his fork. The third claim was filed through a third-party reshipping service. These are legitimate businesses. People use them all the time to forward packages to different addresses. But they can also be used to obscure the final destination of stolen goods. Torres's voice flattened. The name attached to the reshipping account is Glenn Peel Jr. Home address listed as 411 Cedar Brook Drive, Frisco, Texas. The kitchen was completely silent. "That's federal," Mario said. "That is very federal," Torres confirmed. Using the mail system, including package delivery services operating under federal postal agreements, to obtain goods through fraud or theft is federal mail fraud. Filing a false insurance claim on top of that adds another charge. We're not talking about a misdemeanor anymore, Mario. We're talking about a federal criminal complaint. Can you send me everything in writing? Documented, time-stamped, official UPS loss prevention letterhead? Already printing it. You'll have it in your email in 10 minutes. A brief silence. You need to get this to the right people fast. Once I file the formal flag on our end, it goes into a federal reporting queue automatically. You want your people briefed before it lands on a stranger's desk. Understood. Thank you, Torres. You can call it even on those favors, she said, and hung up. Mario opened his email and waited. The document arrived in 8 minutes. He read through it twice, then picked up his phone and called Carol Hampton. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was cautious. "Mario, I told you the contract is—" "I'm not calling about the contract." He kept his voice steady. "I'm calling as a private citizen reporting a federal crime. I have documented evidence from UPS loss prevention linking Glenn Peel Jr. at 411 Cedar Brook Drive to 3 counts of high-value package theft and a fraudulent insurance claim filed through a federal mail system. I have it in writing on official letterhead. Time-stamped and signed." The line went quiet. "Say that again," Hampton said. Slowly. He said it again. He heard the sharp intake of breath. Then the sound of her chair moving. Then silence as she read the document he forwarded to her phone in real time. "Mario." Her voice was different now. The caution was gone. In its place was something sharper, focused. "I need you to write up everything you have. Tonight. Unofficial summary. Personal capacity. No federal contractor language anywhere in it. Just a private citizen's account of what he observed and what he obtained through legal personal channels. I'll have it to you by midnight." "Good." A pause. "Your suspension. I want you to know I'm already working on getting that cleared. This changes the picture completely. The investigation has its own legs now." Her voice dropped slightly. "You did good, Mario. You did everything right." He didn't answer that. He just told her good night and hung up. He worked through the evening. The written summary took 2 hours. Every detail in clean, plain language. The timeline, the footage, the freeze frame, Torres's findings, Hector's camera footage, all of it laid out in chronological order, sourced and documented, with no federal contractor language anywhere in the document. Just a man writing down what he had seen and learned and proven. He sent it to Hampton at 11:50 p.m. Then he closed the laptop and sat in the quiet kitchen. Outside, Cedar Brook Drive was still and dark. The streetlights threw long orange rectangles across the empty road. Sylvia's house sat silent at 411, every window dark, the new car gleaming in the driveway. Mario looked at it for a long moment. By Thursday afternoon, a federal warrant had been issued for Glenn Peel Jr. Mail fraud, theft of U.S. mail, and criminal mischief. The last charge, anchored by fingerprints Lance's team had recovered from Peachy's vandalized vehicle that matched Glenn's prints on file from his prior conviction. The arrest was scheduled for Friday morning. Mario finally ate his dinner. Cold, but he didn't mind. Mario was up before the sun on Friday. He didn't set an alarm. He just woke at 5:30, with his eyes open and his mind already running. The the way it always had before something significant happened. He made coffee, got dressed, pressed slacks, buttoned down, the same quiet professionalism he had worn every single day on this block, and took his mug to the front porch. He waited. The neighborhood was dark and still. A light frost had settled overnight, silvering the grass and the rooftops. The streetlights reflected off Sylvia's new car in the driveway across the road. The bay window was dark. The whole house was dark. Mario wrapped both hands around his mug and watched the street and let the cold air sit on his face. At 8:50, a dark blue sedan turned onto Cedarbrook Drive. Unmarked, but the profile was unmistakable to anyone who had spent 12 years working alongside federal agents. 30 seconds later, a Frisco PD patrol car followed it around the corner. Then a second patrol car. Mario set down his mug. He watched Officer Lance step out of the lead patrol car in full uniform, back straight, moving with the deliberate, unhurried purpose of a man executing a lawful warrant. Two federal agents in plain clothes climbed out of the sedan. They converged on 411 Cedarbrook Drive from 3 angles without rushing. The moment the first car door closed, a light came on in Sylvia's front room. One of the federal agents rang the doorbell, then knocked. 3 sharp official knocks that carried clearly in the cold morning air. Mario could hear them from his porch. A full minute passed. The front door swung open. Sylvia appeared in her bathrobe, hair loose, eyes still heavy with sleep, and then immediately wide. She looked at the agents. She looked at Lance. She looked at the patrol cars at her curb. Her mouth opened. Glenn Peel Jr. appeared behind her a second later, and that was when everything on his face collapsed at once. Not surprise, recognition. The particular look of a man who had been waiting for something and understood immediately that it had arrived. He turned to go back inside. "Mr. Peel!" One of the federal agents stepped forward. His voice was calm and absolute. "Glenn Peel Jr., we have a federal warrant for your arrest. Please step outside." Sylvia came alive. "No!" Her voice cracked across the cold air like something breaking. "No, this is wrong. This is completely wrong. He set this up." She pointed across the street directly at Mario. Her arm was shaking. "That man right there. He manufactured all of this. This is retaliation. This is what this is. He's been after my family since the day he moved in because I reported him and he couldn't handle it." "Ma'am." Lance stepped in front of her, not unkindly but immovably. "I need you to step back inside and let us do our job. He set my brother up." "Ma'am." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Step back, please." Glenn was handcuffed on the front walkway, calm in the mechanical way people get when the thing they feared has finally landed, and there is nothing left to do but endure it. He didn't look at Sylvia. He didn't look across the street. He looked at the ground and walked with the agents to the sedan without resistance. Sylvia stood in her doorway and watched the car door close on her brother. The screaming had stopped. What was left on her face was something rawer and quieter. Not grief, exactly. Not yet. Something closer to the moment just before it. Lance walked back to her door. He held a document in his hand. "Ms. Peel." He extended it toward her. "This is a misdemeanor citation for filing a false police report. Under county statute, a third or subsequent false report of this nature carries a formal charge. This is your 4th documented incident on record." He paused. "A separate inquiry has also been opened by the Regional Postal Inspector's Office into your potential role in facilitating the theft operation. You'll be contacted by an investigator in the coming days. I'd strongly advise you to speak with an attorney." Sylvia took the paper with one hand. The other hand gripped the door frame. Lance walked back to his patrol car without looking across the street. The sedan pulled away from the curb. The second patrol car followed. The street went quiet again. Sylvia stood in her doorway and looked across at Mario. He was still on his porch. Still. Both hands loose at his sides. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. After a long moment, Sylvia stepped back inside. The door closed behind her quietly, this time. No rattle, no force. Just closed. Mario picked up his coffee mug from the porch railing. It had gone cold while he was watching. He looked out at the empty street, at the frost still sitting on the lawns, at the thin morning light beginning to open up the sky above the rooftops. For the first time since moving to Cedarbrook Drive, everything was exactly as it should be. 3 weeks passed quietly. That was the thing Mario noticed most. The quiet. Not the tense, loaded quiet of the weeks before. The kind that had weight and edges, and felt like something waiting to happen. This was different. This was the quiet of a street that had exhaled. Cars came and went. Kids rode bikes in the cul-de-sac. Neighbors waved from driveways. The oak trees along the sidewalk had dropped most of their leaves, and the morning air had that clean, cold smell that meant November was settling in for real. Sylvia's house sat empty. Her car was gone by the weekend after the arrest. Peachy had heard through a neighbor that she was staying with a cousin somewhere outside the city, while her attorney managed the inquiry. The house went up on the market 12 days later. A sign appeared in the yard, white post, blue letters, and the bay window that had watched Mario every morning for a month stared out at the street like a closed eye. Mario didn't feel satisfaction when he looked at it. He didn't feel much of anything about it. He just noted it the way he noted everything and moved on. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Official, cream-colored. The seal of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service pressed into the upper left corner. Mario picked it up from the mailbox, looked at it for a moment, and carried it inside. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had built his timeline, mapped his theft grid, drawn his 2-column list on the night Sylvia stripped his authorization, and opened it carefully. The letter was 3 paragraphs. Formal language, precise and clean, the kind of writing that meant exactly what it said and nothing more. It informed Mario Delmore that in recognition of his instrumental role in the successful closure of the Cedarbrook Estates package theft investigation, which federal agents had subsequently connected to a broader regional reshipping fraud network operating across 4 North Texas subdivisions, he was being awarded a formal commendation of service, the highest recognition available to contracted investigators, signed by the Deputy Regional Inspector and countersigned by Carol Hampton. Mario read it once. Then he set it on the table and sat back. He thought about 12 years of cold coffee and 6 a.m. briefings and cases that lived in his chest long after the paperwork was filed. He thought about Peachy standing in her driveway in her housecoat, jaw tight, holding herself together. He thought about Hector Bander sliding a keyboard toward him without asking a single question. He thought about Lance walking to that sedan on a cold Friday morning with a warrant in his hand and not once looking back for approval. He got up, found a frame in the hall closet, the good one, dark wood, bought for a certificate he hadn't known he'd need, and put the letter inside it. He hung it in the entryway. Eye level. The first thing anyone who walked through his front door would see. Peachy knocked at 2 o'clock. She was carrying a covered plate and wearing her good coat, and she walked up his porch steps like she had been doing it for years. Mario held the door open, and she came inside, handed him the plate. Sweet potato pie, still warm, the smell of it filling the entryway immediately, and looked at the framed letter on the wall. She stood in front of it for a moment without speaking, read it top to bottom. Then she made a small sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sigh, but was something true in between. "Come sit outside," Mario said. They took the 2 porch chairs. Mario cut 2 slices of pie and brought them out on plates. The afternoon was cold and pale, the sky the flat white of late November. The street stretched out before them in the low, unhurried quiet of a weekday afternoon. "I relaunched the group this morning," Peachy said. "I saw 51 members already. Every household on the block except one." She paused. "I called it Cedarbrook Neighbors. All welcome." "I know. I joined." She smiled at that. A real one, the kind that settled into her whole face. She looked out at the street, at the empty driveway across the road, at the for sale sign in the yard, at the frost-silvered lawns running all the way to the park entrance. She shook her head slowly. 22 years, she said. 22 years I have lived on this block. And this, right now, this is the first time it has actually felt like a neighborhood. Mario looked out at Cedarbrook Drive, the oak trees bare and clean against the white sky, a kid on a bicycle turning the corner at the far end of the block, a neighbor waving from across the street, a man Mario hadn't yet met, waving anyway, the easy wave of someone who had nothing to hide. He lifted his coffee cup. "Give it time," he said. "We're just getting started. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.